Welcome, everyone, to today's Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is June 8th, 2023. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023 signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. Then you have to punch in the conference ID number, which is 450-024-930, then hit the pound. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link and the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue/hearing or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. To authorize this hybrid form of meeting, I will have a roll call of all members. Please state your name and whether you agree or not, starting with Buck.
James M. Upson, I agree.
Lee Hovey, I agree.
Paul C. Semple, I agree.
David S. Nixon, I agree.
Randy Potash, I agree.
Virginia Fenwick, I agree.
David H. Veach, I agree.
I would ask that any citizen or non-board member participating in the call via the phone, please give us your name and the last four digits of your phone number for ID purposes. The format we follow is as follows. The hearing notice is read by the lady to my right. This is Sarah B. Clark. She's the PPO for the town. That's a principal permitting officer. After that, you or the individual representing you would make a presentation. Well, I would then ask for anybody either here or on Microsoft Teams who wishes to speak in favor to do so. I would then read any and all letters in the file, whether they be pro or con. I will then ask for anybody either here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak either against or has a specific question to indicate you'd like to join the meeting. When that's done, we would have board members ask questions. When we were done with that, we would close the public hearing and go into deliberation. Deliberation is strictly amongst the members unless a member interjects you into the conversation. We would then have a vote in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You need a supermajority to be successful. That means of the 5 votes, you've got to get 4 to be successful. Voting today would be Buck, Paul, myself, Randy, and Dave. All votes are taken by roll call, and I don't think there's anything else to say except, do we have any minutes, Paul?
I think we do have some minutes.
Okay.
Minutes of May 4, 2023. I'll move to accept the minutes as published.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
All vote. What?
Buck approves.
All approves?
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. Okay. We have a couple of requests for continuances. So we'll start with the first one, which is 23-040. Please, Sarah.
Application number 23-040, Michael and Elizabeth Riley, care of William G. Litchfield, Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 448 Old Harbor Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 16G, Block 11, Lot K3. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the construction of an addition, covered entry, and pergola. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 0.1 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District, floodplain elevation 13, 14.1 feet from the northerly abutter, 7.4 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed addition and pergola will be nonconforming in that they will be located 8.4 feet from the southerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed covered entry will be nonconforming in that it will be located 15.4 feet from the Coastal Conservancy District where a 50-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 1,061 square feet, 10.2%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,073 square feet, 10.3%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 10,448 square feet of buildable upland where 20,000 square feet is required, and contains 15,000 square feet of land area where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protected bylaw.
Mr. Litchfield.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of the applicants Michael and Elizabeth Riley. A day after the legal ad ran, we were advised by the engineer that the site plan needed to be corrected. What you've seen in the plans is not proposed to be changed, but the amount of buildable upland was inaccurately stated. As such, the percentage, the actual hard numbers of the size of the proposed expansion don't change, but the legal ad needed to be corrected to reflect the buildable upland percentage. As such, we would request respectfully this be continued for 2 weeks until June 22nd for the re-advertising, which is already underway.
I'll move to grant the requested continuance to June 22nd, 2023.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote on that, Buck?
Buck approves.
All approves?
Approve.
Dave Veach approves.
I approve. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Mr. Litchfield. So we go to 23-031, please, Sarah.
Application number 23-031, Philip and Laurie Dumas, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owners of property located at 67 Palmer Drive. Also showed on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15G, Block 37, Lot P7. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 12.6 feet from the westerly abutter and 22.2 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed dwelling will be nonconforming in that it will be located 8 feet from the westerly abutter and 17 feet from the southerly abutter where a 25-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 888 square feet, 8.9%, and the proposed building coverage is 1,485 square feet, 14.8%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 10,004 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw. This was continued from May 4th, 2023.
On Tuesday, June 6th, Sarah received the following note from William F. Riley. This is to confirm our request to continue this matter to July 13th. The revised plans are not yet completed. Thank you for your assistance.
I'll move to grant the requested continuance to July 13, 2023.
Dave Veach seconds.
Need a vote?
Buck approves.
Paul approves?
Rainey approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. Okay. Sarah, 23-035, please.
Application number 23-035, David Chu and Laura Tosi, care of William F. Riley Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owners of property located at 52 Homestead Lane, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15C, Block 3, Lot 16. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is nonconforming in that it is located 7.4 feet from the northerly abutter and 4.3 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed dwelling will be nonconforming in that it will be located 5.3 feet from the northerly abutter and 4.3 feet from the southerly abutter where a 15-foot setback is required. The existing building coverage is 704 square feet, 18.4%, and the proposed building coverage is 991 square feet, 25.9%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 3,820 square feet, where 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw. This was continued from May 25th, 2023.
Sarah received the following note on Tuesday, June 6th from William F. Riley. I am unable to proceed with the application for 52 Homestead due to contractual matters between the architect who is responsible for the design and her company. I'm requesting a continuance to August 10th, 2023 to ensure that there will be no further requests and that the contractual matters will be fully resolved.
Do we have any idea what the contractual matters are?
Yes, she was dismissed by her firm, and they are in legal negotiations.
I see. All right. I'll move to grant the requested continuance to August 10th, 2023.
And Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
All approves?
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. Okay. And to finish that sentence, Paul, the applicants wanted to have her continue as their architect. They did not want to switch, so that's what the problem is. Okay, so let's get down to business. Sarah, how about 23-049?
Application number 23-049, Highland Realty Trust, care of Michael Tardamella, 160 Commonwealth Avenue, Suite L3, Boston, Mass. 02116. Owner of property located at 309 Stage Harbor Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 14C, Block 47, Lot 31. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming accessory structure on a non-conforming lot via the installation of a new foundation. The existing structure is non-conforming and that is located 2.6 feet from the southerly abutter. The proposed foundation will increase the building height within the required abutter's setback. The building coverage will remain 2,291 square feet, 7.2%, or 10% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 31,679 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. Mike Tardamella from Patrick Ahern Architect here for 309 Stage Harbor Road. So we were here before you for both structures on the property and received approval for the main house and what we're calling the detached barn, if you will, back in December of last year. We're back before you tonight. The only change to the barn that we're requesting is to be able to raise the ridge. As such, it needs a new foundation under it, we discovered after further inspection. And in order to do that, we need to lift the structure, put it back down on a new foundation. The result of that will be a change in the ridge height by 16 inches, raising the existing ridge height to 16 inches from what it is today. There are no other proposed architectural changes from what was approved back in December. I'm happy to go through the criteria if you'd like. That's about as simple as I could make it.
No, I don't think that's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate you'd like to join the meeting.
I see no one to speak in favor.
All right, then I'll read the correspondence. The first is from Christina Bassett, and she writes, Sarah just forwarded on June 7th. Sarah just forwarded me your email. This is actually written to Buck. The CHC heard 309 Stage Harbor Road on August 16th, 2022, and the structures that would be the house and the barn were reviewed under our Chapter 158 bylaw and the Cape Cod Commission Act due to the property being located in the eligible National Register District. Under Chapter 158, the Commission found both structures, that is the house and the barn, to be historically significant, but the proposed changes did not materially diminish both structures' historical significance, and therefore the Commission did not impose a demolition delay. Under the Cape Cod Commission Act, the Commission found that the proposed changes did not constitute as a substantial alteration and did not choose to send the property as a discretionary referral to the Cape Cod Commission. On February 9, 2023, the applicant submitted an administrative approval to the CHC to install a foundation under the barn after finding out that the current foundation was not structurally sound. Mr. Messina, Mr. Lear, and Mr. Aikman approved the administrative approval on February 16, 2023, after reviewing the administrative approval application and the original application from 2022. Then we have a memo dated 6/6. This is from Judith Giorgio, the health agent for the town of Chatham. I have reviewed the plan to renovate. The existing property was ordered to connect to the sewer and has at this time not completed their application to connect. The plans before the ZBA include the addition of a bedroom in the garage/guest house. The property has an existing 5-bedroom approval. The barn/guest house will have 2 bedrooms for a total of 6 bedrooms on the property. Connection to the municipal sewer should be a requirement for approval of this proposal. That's the end of the correspondence. Is there anyone in the audience here on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak either against this or has a specific question? If so, please indicate you'd like to join the meeting.
There is no one to speak in opposition or with a question.
Okay, so we'll have questions from the board. Buck?
So, I don't recall the hearing from December, but I'm confused by the letter from the Board of Health, which isn't from you, it's from her, and she's not here, but I'll
Yeah.
ask. The proposal for the house that's currently in renovation, 4 bedrooms?
So I think I can address it this way. We, as part of our building permit for the house, had to connect to municipal sewer. There is a design in place for that. We'll be doing the same thing for the barn. If you'd like to go back and review the bedroom count on the house, I can do that. But we will be addressing her concerns by connecting to the municipal sewer as part of the project. We have to do that in order to get a building permit from Jay.
I understand that, but, all right, well, I'll ask it this. I have the print in front of me, page 6, and it has the proposed second floor and the proposed first floor, and I only see 1 bedroom.
Of this structure or the main house?
I think we're only here talking about the barn.
Right, I thought you had mentioned the main house in the first
Well, I
part of your
did,
question.
but you didn't have that number, and I wasn't gonna,
Yeah, I don't have that plan in front of me. So
That's
what we're
fine.
doing here is we are adding a bedroom to the first floor here, and there is a bedroom on the second floor currently that we're basically maintaining. So I don't think the perception that there's currently 1 bedroom in the structure and we're adding a second bedroom is incorrect. But as part of the project, it'll be connected to sewer, so the bedroom count issue is of less of a concern.
all right, that just, it would have been, well, we won't worry about that. I'm gonna pass, I might have another question.
Okay, Lee?
I don't really have any questions, but I'm confused as well about the 2 bedrooms, but just because the plans didn't say that, but if it's 2 bedrooms, then.
Well, I think it's the Title V rules where we've labeled it office, but per Title V, that constitutes as a bedroom, as they would look at it since it has a door on it. The intent is to use it as an office. The intent is to use the first floor as additional guest accommodations. I think that's where the difference is right now. So we have labeled it as office, but per Title V, would be considered a bedroom for bedroom count purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
I have no questions.
Randy?
No questions.
Ginny?
I have 2 questions. No kitchen in the plans, right?
No,
No plans to have any cooking device, correct?
no, we can't have 2 on the lot, no.
I'm just clarifying that for the record because with 2 bedrooms, or even with 1 bedroom, you want to make sure that it isn't technically, or that it isn't being, it can't be a guest house technically.
No, it cannot.
And just wanted to just make sure that I asked that question. My second question is, so I wasn't here in December, but I did go back and review the history, and it was very well chronicled by, I think that was Christina Bassett, that our chairman read. So you were in front of Historic in August, ZBA in December, and at that time, there was no discussion, really little discussion about the barn, frankly. I've reviewed the tape. It was mostly about the house. And then 2 months later, we find out in February or at least that appears to be when you discovered the foundation issue, because you went to back to historic for discussion about the installation, the change of the foundation. Is that right, that
Well, so we
timeline?
submitted for administrative approval to change the ridge height of the previously approved.
Because
design.
you discovered the foundation issue?
So from a process standpoint, architecturally, we develop a schematic design, we submit to boards and commissions, we do some investigative work structurally. After all of that, we bring in a builder for the project. The builder then goes through the structure, and a structural engineer is engaged. We had anticipated being able to leave the structure where it was. We are leaving it where it is, it's the same footprint, but ultimately, when we start to dig in a little bit more and they start activity on site with the other structure, they discover, hey, you know what, this foundation really should be replaced. It's the better, it's the better process in order to preserve the structure longer term. And with the investment that the client realizes that they're going to be putting into the structure, that's what they would prefer to do. So hence, that's why we're back in front of you today, is
Right.
just to raise that.
Right.
Because functionally, when we could put it back down at the same height, it would be a little too low in the ground from a building code standpoint, so we'd like to just lift it a little bit, just to get a step up and in.
Yep, no, understood. And really, my question, which you've really essentially answered, was, I went through the timeline because it seems as though within 2 months of coming in front of the ZBA in December, it was discovered that the foundation needed to be changed, which then brought you back here today, essentially. So really, the question is, how did you discover it, which you really answered? And is it common or unusual to have discoveries like this? I'm just trying to gauge why that wasn't discovered
Well, so
sooner.
I think, in all fairness, our application is submitted way before our hearings too. So I don't think it was a 2-month window. I think it was a little bit longer than that, probably more like 4. Is it common? I think each case is unique. I mean, as you know, as a board, I certainly wouldn't come in and say there's precedence for this, but in this situation, based on the age of the structure, as we dug in a little bit more, it appears that part of the area that we couldn't see visually from the outside initially when we were first brought onto the project, the back part of the structure is actually on timbers that are on dirt floor. So that's certainly not sustainable, certainly not something we'd want to keep and put in, a capital investment to that structure. Overall, we're not looking to put a basement under it and add more space. This is really just about preserving what's there long-term, because we know the history of the structure, and it is something that the owner wants to keep.
Okay. So, sorry, I kind of went around it with a long explanation for my question, but essentially that was my question. Like, why wasn't it discovered sooner so that we could have deliberated it all together at that time? So, thank you.
Dave Each.
I have no questions, Dave.
Buck?
So I want to make it clear, I have absolutely no problem with the new foundation. And to the best of my memory, which is fading, I thought that's all we were doing at the last hearing was the foundation. But I guess I was asleep when you mentioned raising the ridge and changing the pitch and replacing the windows. But the question is, when you raise the ridge and you're going to change the pitch of the roof, no?
No, there's no change to the pitch of the roof. We're simply here to raise the ridge in an effort to put the structure back down on a new foundation. The change in the pitch
Oh,
is
maybe
to the
it's the
dormer.
dormer.
That's it.
I got
Which
you.
is flat right now, which I don't think is necessarily indicative of
Okay,
what it
good.
should be.
That's, I did,
There's no change to the structure, the pitch of the roof, the mass and
so
scale.
you're not ripping,
Other than the dormer that's there.
so when you put the new dormer in, you're going to put in a new ridge.
From the interior, yes, but that exterior shell, the mass of that will not change. So there's no
Okay.
change, there's no change to
Yep.
the roof pitch.
Okay.
Paul?
I'll move to approve the application as submitted. Oh,
How about deliberation?
how about if we move into deliberations? How about if we close the hearing and move into deliberations?
Dave Veach seconds that
Excellent
one.
idea. Okay, we're going to vote on that.
Buck votes yes.
Paul votes yes.
Randy votes yes.
Dave Veach votes yes.
Yes. Lee, deliberations.
I think this seems pretty straightforward. It meets all the criteria, and I think will be an improvement and a nice addition to the property. So I would vote in favor if I were voting.
Paul?
Yeah, I don't think this changes our original decision. This is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, so I'll vote in favor.
Randy?
I was fortunate enough to meet with you when you were there, and I could totally see your point, and I think it's a great project, and I'd support it.
Ginny?
I think it's a very beautiful design, and I think it's an improvement to what's there now. So if I were voting, I would support it.
Dave Each?
Yeah, back in the fall, I was very pleased to see the change of the pitch of the dormer that was proposed for the barn. It was that's a big improvement over what exists, and certainly understand the desire, the need, and it really makes sense to replace the foundation and to lift it so that it can meet the code. And so, they end up basically increasing the height of the building within the setback, which requires our approval, and the whole process seems to be working fine as far as I'm concerned, so I will support it.
Buck?
I have nothing to add.
All right.
I'll move to approve the application as submitted. We have conditions that carry over from the original approval.
So this is a new application. The conditions that were imposed on the previous application back in 2022 were all of the standard conditions.
Then I would move to approve it with the same standard conditions to apply to this work as well.
And Dave each seconds.
All right, need a vote on that. Buck?
Buck approves.
All votes yes.
Randy?
votes yes.
Dave each approves.
And I vote yes, that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your comments. I appreciate it.
Sarah, 23-041, please.
Application number 23-041, Sydney Realty Trust, care of William G. Litchfield Esquire, 330 Orleans Road, North Chatham, Mass. 02650. Owners of property located at 23 Woodcarver Knoll, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 11D, Block 32, Lot 4A. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a nonconforming dwelling on a nonconforming lot via the construction of addition and garage/pool house with habitable space above. The existing dwelling is nonconforming, and that it is located 9.9 feet from the road where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed addition and garage/pool house with living space above will comply with all bulk and dimensional requirements of the bylaw, but is considered a substantial alteration, and under the second except clause of Section 6 of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, such substantial alteration requires the grant of a special permit. The existing building coverage is 1,591 square feet, 9.4%, and the proposed building coverage is 2,525 square feet, 14.97%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is nonconforming in that it contains 16,870 square feet, or 20,000 square feet is required in the R20 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
Mr. Litchfield?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Bill Litchfield here on behalf of Julie Moore, who is trustee, has owned this house in Woodcarver Knoll since, I think, 2001. With us today virtually is her architect, Dana Cohen, of Dana Cohen Architect. Julie may or may not be joining us online. We are here for a proposal that has two aspects. One is a very small addition to the existing home at the southeast or right rear, if you're in the standing in the street corner of the property, which is 204, thank you, Sarah, 204 square feet there. Complies with zoning, a modest change in the rear, and not at all visible to anyone, really. And we are also seeking your permission for the construction of a two-car garage with living quarters above, which will also comply with all of our zoning requirements. But as you know, under Bjorkland and Bransford, when you have a non-conforming lot, as we do here, even when that which is proposed is compliant with zoning, it still requires a special permit from you. There is also a further complication in regard to the timing of the sewer expansion in this area that I will get to later. And I don't know whether all members of the board, I don't know whether you received anything updated from Conservation Commission. You did, good, because you and I probably received correspondence saying that no filing had occurred with Conservation, and that's not the case. Conservation has heard it, has reviewed it, and will be writing an order of conditions, I believe, on June 28th. The sewer system is a little bit more complicated, and I will get into that shortly. What we are talking about, would you like, Mr. Chairman, would you like Dana to talk about the architectural design before I go into the criteria?
Yeah, that's entirely up to you.
Dana, would you like to join us and talk about the design that you have proposed as shown there? You may not be able to see it, but we can.
Sure. Hi, hello, everybody. This is a design that's.
Well, while Dana perhaps unmutes herself, I will speak briefly about what is proposed. The existing house is on the right, and what we are proposing is we think, a complementary garage. That is not a connector, it's a fence between the two, a picket fence or close to a picket fence. The architectural details are quite similar. Of course, under our bylaw, we have some terminology, exterior mechanical appliance systems, or EMAS. And at the top, above the garage, we have what I have learned is called an EDE, an expendable design element, because I recognize that cupolas are not universally beloved in this board. So we'll gloss over the EDE, which is on here. It is a simple, we think, and complementary design, which mirrors that of the existing house. And also proposed, although it doesn't require your review, is a swimming pool, a small swimming pool, 16 by 32, I think it is, to the north, and there will be an exterior mechanical appliance system for that, but that also complies. So Dana, feel free to join if you're able.
Can you guys hear?
Thank you.
You are able to hear me?
You're on, a little louder, I think might help.
Okay. How's that? Is anybody able to hear me now?
We can barely hear you. If you can make it a little louder, that would be better, but go ahead. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I'm unable to make it louder. I apologize.
Well,
if
very well.
everybody
Go ahead.
can't, okay. I'm just happy to be here or virtually be here to have some time today to describe the design. The client, the owner of the property, would like to expand the use of the acquired lot, recently acquired lot, with a pool and therefore a small structure, and for housing some things that, for auxiliary activities that go with the pool, as well as a two-car garage, which we have sized to be fairly conservative in size, I believe, to house two cars and a little bit of pool furniture, etc., and then a small guest space above, room for an overnight guest. The design is intended to be in keeping with the neighborhood and the existing house. The cupola, as was mentioned, is a decorative element that the client does like, but I believe could be expendable, as was mentioned. I think that's everything that I want to say right now.
Thank you, Dana.
Questions?
I'll, if I may, Mr. Chairman, before I get into the criteria, explain a couple of things about this property. During the 20-plus years that Dana has owned it, she's wanted a garage, and several times she's asked me if that was possible, and I said we have a zoning board of appeals that is generally favorably disposed toward a garage. However, Since 2014, it has not been possible to get a special permit which creates a new nonconformity, and coverage would be a new nonconformity. So Dana thought long and hard about her desire for a garage, and she bought a lot next door, 5,300 square feet, which increased the size of her lot from 11,000 square feet to the 16,000 square feet that is behind you. And everything basically from the, if I can do this, the old lot line ran right about there. And this area was purchased in order to have room for a garage. And have room for a garage which is less than the 15% coverage limitation. So we've given a lot of thought to this and as to how it might work. I think of the 8 adjacent houses, only 2, ours included, don't have garages, and we would like to have one. So that's sort of a segue into the criteria as to adequacy of site, including building coverage and setbacks. We have, as expanded, a mid-sized lot. We have existing street and sideline nonconformities, but I think the site is adequate for the existing residential use. If you approve the special permit, the site will remain adequate for construction of the 2 additions, which meet all dimensional, coverage, setback, height, all bulk requirements of the bylaw. That is what we're proposing is completely compliant as to zoning. As to compatibility of size, as expanded by the purchase which Julie undertook, we have an average size lot, and right now a very low percentage of coverage, 7.4%. And like all the lots on Woodcarver, it's oriented to the views to the south and west, down to the marsh and down to Oyster River. If you approve the special permit, you can do so based on a finding that the proposed rear addition is certainly not readily visible and is not at all detrimental. And the garage, having a garage, will make the house more compatible. While it is a larger footprint, it remains comparable and it meets all zoning requirements. If you look at the 3rd page of the handout, in terms of size of structures, we have a couple of neighboring houses which are much, much larger. The house 2 doors down has a gross floor area of 8,100 square feet, almost 8,200 square feet. A house diagonally across the street to the northwest has gross floor area of 5,300 square feet. That house has a living area of 4,300 square feet. If you approve the special permit, the living area of this house will be less than 3,400 square feet. Similarly, 41 Woodcarver down the street has a living area of 6,300 square feet. So while it is an addition, unquestionably, it's not out of scale with the mass or the size of the other houses in the neighborhood. As to the extent of increase in nonconformity, we have a lot size nonconformity, although less nonconforming than we were. We have street and sideline nonconformity setback deficiencies, but there will be no increase whatsoever. Everything that is proposed to you today, the rear addition and the garage, both comply with zoning. They're completely conforming rather than non-conforming. As to suitability of site, we have a residential neighborhood developed over time. This house was built around 1935. It doesn't have a feeling of 1935 because there have been a number of changes to it over the years. The southwest corner of the lot is within 50 feet of the top of the coastal bank, but as indicated, we have filed with and been heard by Conservation as to the rear addition, which is just barely within the 100-foot adjacent upland resource area. The proposed garage is well over 100 feet from any wetlands, and there's no conservation review involved there. The site, I think, you can find to be suitable for the continued residential use. As to scale, sighting, mass, views, and vistas, the existing house was modified and expanded over the years. The scale and mass are comparable with others in the neighborhood. There is no impact on views and vistas. If you approve the special permit, obviously it will be a larger house, but the scale remains consistent and appropriate. And with the cedar shingle sidewalls and matching architectural roofing, I think it will be appropriate. Again, the neighborhood focus is to the south and the west, and the applicant granted a view easement to her neighbor to the north. When you come down Pondview Avenue, take a right onto Pondview Lane before you take a left onto Woodcarver. Thank you, Sarah. That entire area was granted by Julie to her neighbor to the north. So this change will have no impact on views and vistas, and that neighbor has a protected view. As to compatibility of use, residential use, no change. Adequacy of sewage and water, and I know you were waiting for me to speak about that because you read what I read, which is the memo from Judy Giorgio. We currently have town water in a Title V for 4 bedrooms. We've been patiently waiting for the municipal sewer to be expanded toward the street. Take a look, please, if you would, at the 4th sheet of the handout. That is the town of Chatham's color-coded plans for expanding its sewer. This was produced in, I believe, 2012. And it's kind of small, I understand, but the blue areas were supposed to be done between September of 2014 and April of 2016. The red area is contract number 2 between 2014 and 2016. We're the 4th area, the yellow area, contract number 4. It says in that small print, approximate construction period September of 2015 to May of 2017. It is now June of 2023. So there's a handwritten note, it's my handwriting, that says 7/19/19, 2, 3, and 4 will start in the fall of 2019 to be completed by 2022. That's what I was told 4 years ago. Julie started this process in 2020, when the extended time frame, which was supposed to end in 2017, had been extended until 2022. She bought the next door neighbor's lot. She had plans done. She knew full well that she couldn't build the garage with a living space above on top of her septic system. And we did that in reliance on what the town of Chatham had told us. We now understand that it is an additional couple of years before sewers are going to be installed on Woodcarver Knoll. That's not your fault. Certainly not Julie Moore's fault either. So what we are proposing, and what we're seeking for 2 reasons, is permission for the rear addition, and frankly, I think the hearing would be over by now if I were just talking about the rear addition. We're also seeking your approval for the garage. We know it can't be built on top of the existing septic system, but we also don't like, and we know that you don't like, people who come to you serially, sequentially, asking for this now and something else a year from now and something else 2 years from thereafter. We think it is a better use of your time and our time and fair to all to let you know what is proposed. We know that this garage cannot be completed, and Jay isn't going to give us a building permit or an occupancy permit for it until sewers are in the street. But we think that it is appropriate to tell you what is proposed, and what is proposed is that garage. It may be built serially. We know, obviously, we wouldn't start anything, even the addition on the rear, until the fall. Under our bylaw in Chatham, special permits have to be commenced within 2 years. State law is actually 3. But some of you have been around long enough to remember something called the Permit Extension Act, which allowed for a 6-year window after 2008 for the use of special permits. Those are special circumstances, the economy. But we think, given the amount of time and energy that Julie has devoted to this, and those of us who have been working with her, that it would not be unfair, if you're inclined to grant the special permit for the garage, to approve it now, knowing full well that we can't construct it until the sewers are there. And if we have to come back in 2 years for an extension, we will certainly do so. It is a difficult situation. We had thought, and Julie had thought, that the sewer lines would be in place by now, but she's worked on this for more than 3 years. I've been involved in it for 3 years. And I think it would be appropriate, and I hope that you will agree with me, to grant the special permit now. If the time passes and we can't do it, we'll have to start over again. That wouldn't be a good use of your time, but if it's necessary, it is necessary. Finish up the criteria as to traffic flow and safety. It's a minimal change. Having a garage is a slight positive in terms of traffic in an overall broader sense. So the issue is whether the proposed additions, which meet all zoning requirements and with greater but still consistent living area, is substantially more detrimental to the existing house on a non-conforming lot, although it's a lot which was expanded by 50% in order to allow for construction of the garage. That's how this all began. That garage will be built in complete compliance with the bylaw as to setbacks and coverage. The proposed addition meets all zoning requirements and is designed to be harmonious with both the existing house and the neighboring properties. The design of the proposed garage and the spare bedroom above for adult children and other family members incorporates the traditional design elements, such as the cedar shingle siding, and is consistent with those of the existing house. Again, when the project began more than 3 years ago, we had every expectation the sewer lines would be in place by now. That delay has caused a problem. It's our problem. We're having to deal with it, but we felt it better to come to you and tell you what we wanted as an overall package, even though we know we can't begin construction for some time, rather than seeking piecemeal or nickel-dime approval. Again, the statute contemplates a 3-year period for construction, and if we need to come back to you, we can do so. I recognize that it's an unusual set of circumstances, but that's exactly what it is. We hope that you can see fit to grant the special permit, and certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams that wishes to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate you'd like to speak.
I see no one to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. The first is from Christina Bassett. She writes on June 8th, the Chatham Historical Commission found the home located at 23 Woodcarver Knoll not historically significant and therefore did not impose a demolition delay. Then we have a memo from Judith Giorgio, the health agent for the town. She writes on 6/6, I've reviewed the plan to add a one-bedroom garage/pool house to the property. The proposed garage/guest house is located on top of the existing septic. The property is in an area slated for sewering in the next 2 to 3 years. Construction of the proposed garage cannot begin until the sewer is available and the process for connection is completed. The existing SDS must be abandoned prior to construction of the garage. Additional flow for the guest quarters must be approved at the time of the sewer connection application. And then we have a note. This is from the Conservation Commission. It's dated June 8th. The Conservation Commission held a public hearing on February 1st, 2023 and March 1st, 2023 for the project of this property. The project is scheduled for an order of conditions on June 28th, 2023, when it will be conditioned to meet the performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Local Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 272, and regulations promulgated thereunder. That's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams that would like to speak against this or has a specific question? If so, please indicate you'd like to join the meeting.
There is no one to speak in opposition or with questions.
Okay, questions from the board. Paul?
Bill, does the view easement go from the house area towards Woodcarver Knoll?
Sarah, if you'd be kind enough to bring up the site plan, it is a diagonal line. Sarah could probably do it more quickly than I. Thank you.
Yeah.
Running from the northerly abutter's house down along that way.
And towards the...
Toward the left is the
Toward the-
area which
yeah.
is protected. No,
Okay.
no structures are to be built in that area.
Okay, so that the construction that you're talking about is not in the area of the view easement?
Correct.
In any case?
Correct.
Is the plan to do the pool and so forth ahead of the garage and? Because
I'll give an uncharacteristic answer. I don't know.
refreshing.
Thank you.
I have no
I
other
could speak-
questions.
The
Randy.
intent is,
Probably a silly question, but is there anywhere else to put the septic system?
We thought about that. It might be shoehorned in with variances from the Board of Health, but it's a $20,000 investment for, 18 months or something. It's just not worth it.
Jenny?
One quick question, Bill. On the site plan A12, it says, well, it doesn't say kitchen, but there is refrigerator, fridge listed, shown there, a sink. Just wanted to make sure there was no cooking. There's a big space there on the drawing.
No stove.
Okay.
We've discussed that at length, and we fully understand it cannot be a separate dwelling unit. It's many of us love our adult children, but we don't always like them. And that might be the purpose for this bedroom.
Yeah,
But it's not gonna have a kitchen.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Dave Each?
Yeah, I just want to, Bill, point out which I'm sure you have probably already discussed with the architect and things, but the close proximity to the maximum lot coverage. And it looks to me like it's maybe about 5 square feet under. And so I'm not sure this is a question. I guess I'm emphasizing to all concerned that we really don't want this coming back to us seeking a variance because after the as-built is done.
And for the record, thank you, Mr. Beach. If I could, Mr. Chairman, respond briefly. I will have discussion with Dana and our builders, our Whitla, who are local and should know, and if they don't, they will, that Mr. Briggs appropriately reviews coverage to the corner board and the exterior, that, a 10 by 10 interior is 10.5 by 10.5, and when you do the math, you begin to have a problem with that 40 or 44 square feet that you've added. So we have to be very careful as to coverage, and it might be useful to reduce everything by 3 inches just in case.
Yeah, I mean, it's close to the limit, and we've also had other things that have come back to us because of impervious roofs put over areas in process that they didn't know that added to. So you need to keep all those things in mind during the process.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
I don't have
Thank
any
you.
other questions, Dave.
Buck?
So I have a question for Mr. Briggs. Jay, in your years of experience, have you seen something similar to this or like this or close to this where we're going to approve something for a construction 2 to 3 years in the future? Is that going to be a problem for you?
I haven't seen it. It's not a problem for me. They're not going to be applying for the building permit for that until such time as they're able to connect to sewer, so I really don't see an issue with it. I think it's beneficial to the board to see it ahead of time, like they're presenting now, rather than piecemeal it. So I think it's good, and if 2 years comes and goes and the sewer's not available, they can come back and request an extension of time.
Thank you.
Lee?
I have no questions.
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves?
All approves?
Approve?
Dave Veach approves.
And I approve. Deliberations. Well, I think I'll start with myself. I have 2 problems with this. Number one, I don't like the idea of approving something that might happen 2 or 3 years from now. It might be 5 or 6. We don't know. Has seen the delays keep going on. Who knows what's going to happen in the interim? I just don't like that. I understand the theory that, well, at least we'll settle it now. We'll settle. I personally rather settle things when they're going to happen, not down the road. So I have a problem with that. Number 2, I find the reference to this is, it's a garage, it's a garage, it's a garage. It isn't a garage. Maybe we could call it a carriage house or something like that, but to me, the massing of this in relation to the house is just too much. It's just simply too much. So from that aspect, I find in our criteria, I couldn't approve this from using that. I thought it was interesting that the square footage of this is more than would be allowed if it were to be a guest house, where you can only have 50%. This is more than that. So to me, it's just too big, it's too much massing, and I don't care for the idea of approving something so far in advance. Randy?
I'm just going to stick with, I don't think it's good to approve it this far in advance either, and I'll hold off on the rest.
Ginny?
First of all, I can appreciate your applicants, her journey, and I applaud the perseverance. I was struggling with, not knowing what you were going to share today about this time delay. I was struggling with the mass. It meets the setbacks except for the road, but it's 9.9 feet from the road. That's a lot of mass for less than 10 feet.
I think I feel more, I appreciate that they're showing us all their cards at this point. I know, they kind of needed to make a decision about, to come in with the addition of the house and leave this part off. I think it's, I'm go along with, I think it's good that they brought it to us in the way that they've brought it to us. So I don't have as much of a problem with that part of it. I think that, it's definitely, massing wise, it does compete with the house to a certain degree. But I don't see it as substantially more detrimental in the neighborhood. So that, I think I can find that it meets our criteria and I could approve it.
Buck?
Well, based on Mr. Briggs's comments, I was all ready to support it. But the chair has 24 years of experience looking at this, and I can't ignore that. So unfortunately, even though, I love the fact that the house wasn't 29.9 feet tall, and the owner went to great lengths to find the land to make it doable to stay under the 15, and they've been working on it for 3 years. I feel terrible, but the chair's experience is my biggest concern, so I'll be supporting him.
Lee?
Well, I agree. I echo the chair's feelings with the experience that you have. I think a lot can happen in 3 years, and it could be 5 years. So that's where I stand.
Paul?
Well, I guess the question really, in my mind, I did have some hesitation in thinking about dealing with this now, given the time frame that we've got, but I appreciate your straightforward approach to not nickel and dime it, as you say. I guess the only real concern I could see would be that there might be changes in some way to our construction code or our standards that might affect the project if it were delayed, such that it might be doable now but not doable 3 or 5 years from now. And the question in my mind would be, would we want those new standards to apply to this situation if they existed? And I guess I would be inclined to say that if we had made those changes, either as a town or by law, then I would probably want them to apply. So I'm inclined to say that I agree that it's necessary to wait until it's in a position to actually go forward. I'm not so concerned about the bulk concept because it's such a wide open area. I think that the design can work at that location and not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
If I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Could I ask the board respectfully that we be allowed to withdraw that portion of the special permit application in regard to the garage, and that you instead approve only the rear addition at this time?
Sure. Randy, how do you feel about that?
I think I would approve that.
Jenny?
I would approve.
Dave?
Yeah, as I indicated, I would, sure.
Buck?
I support.
Lee?
Yes, I would approve that.
Paul?
And I agree, I would support it.
Okay, so,
So I'll move to grant the amended petition, limiting it to that portion of the house, not including the garage addition. Is that sufficient to narrow it down?
And Sarah, if I could, Sarah and I can certainly coordinate. It's 204 square feet. We'll respectfully
If
work
David
on
will be able to provide us with a new site plan, just so we have that on record, that would be helpful.
that and withdraw without prejudice the.
So you're withdrawing without prejudice the application, the balance of the application. All right. I'll move to approve the application as amended.
Dave East seconds.
need a vote? Buck's scratching his head. What is it that Paul just said?
When do we talk about conditions? After we, I got lost and there's no conditions.
I'm thinking in this situation, we're talking about a small addition to the house. I
Oh,
don't think
that.
there's a need for conditions at that location.
Fine, Buck approves.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that, right? Okay.
Paul approves.
Randy?
Randy approves.
Dave?
Dave Each
And I
approves.
approve.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Litchfield. Okay, Sarah, the last one today is 23-050, please.
Application number 23-050, 184 Bar Cliff LLC, care of James M. Norcross, Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owners of property located at 184 Barcliff Avenue, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map 15G, Block 20, Lot B1. The applicant seeks to enlarge, extend, or change a non-conforming dwelling on a non-conforming lot via the demolition of the existing dwelling and detached garage and the construction of a new dwelling. The existing dwelling is non-conforming in that it is located 21.3 feet from the road. The existing garage is non-conforming in that it is located 4.1 feet from the westerly abutter and 16.2 feet from the northerly abutter, where a 25-foot setback is required. The proposed dwelling will be non-conforming in that it will be located 22 feet from the road, where a 40-foot setback is required. The building coverage will remain non-conforming at 1,503 square feet, 15.2%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The lot is non-conforming in that it contains 9,917 square feet, where 40,000 square feet is required in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 6, and Section 5B of the protective bylaw.
Mr. Norcross.
Good afternoon, Jamie Norcross representing Dan Russell, owner of the property. Dan is here with me today in the blue shirt in the second row there. Also available today is David Sargent, who's the architect. He's participating on the Microsoft Teams remotely. The property at 184 Barcliff Avenue, Dan purchased this property back in January. It was owned for many, many years by the Gian Gregorio family. It's a 4-bedroom house existing with a detached garage. A portion of the existing house dates back to the early 1900s. There were a number of additions, or several additions, I should say, over the years to the structure, primarily done in the 1970s and 1980s to the front, east side, and the back of the home. While Dan was looking at the property and after he purchased it, he considered a couple options in terms of how to move forward with the building and determined a demo and a rebuild was the most feasible option in terms of creating a home that would meet modern requirements for living area and also would meet the current requirements for the building code. In terms of nonconformity, the lot is nonconforming as it contains just shy of 10,000 square feet where 40,000 square feet is required. The existing existing dwelling is nonconforming as is located just over 21 feet from Barcliff Avenue where a 40-foot setback is now required in this zone. The existing detached garage, which is over in here, is nonconforming. It's located 4.1 feet from the westerly lot line and 16.2 feet from the north lot line where a 25-foot setback is required. Additionally, the total building coverage is nonconforming as it's 15.2%, where 15% is the maximum allowed. The proposed dwelling will remain a 4-bedroom house and will have an attached as opposed to a detached garage over on, right here on this side of the property. No problem. The dwelling will now meet all sideline and rear setbacks. It will be located slightly further away from Barcliff Avenue, but it's still non-conforming at 22 feet as opposed to the 40 feet now required under current zoning. Again, while the building is slightly non-conforming at 15.2%, it matches the existing building coverage currently at the property. The house will also meet the town bylaw, the building height requirement under the town bylaw. Moving on to the criteria, number one, adequacy of the size of the site in terms of size for the proposed use. We believe the size is adequate for the proposal. It's a small parcel, but the proposed structure, as I mentioned, will meet sideline and rear setbacks. It's located within the setback to Barcliff, but it's no closer than the existing structure and is in line with other homes along Barcliff Avenue. As you go down the street, you see most of the homes appear to be within the setback to the street since they were built well before the R40 zone came into this district. While the proposed building coverage is slightly non-conforming at 15.2%, there's no increase from the existing building coverage, which is also 15.2%. Compatibility of the size of the proposed structure with neighboring properties. Neighborhood is a mixture of various size and ages of homes as you drive around. Some remain largely unchanged from their original design, while others have undergone significant renovations or are new construction. The applicant believes the size is compatible with neighboring properties and that the footprint and mass of the structure is compatible with this lot and the neighborhood in general. Extent of the proposed increase in nonconforming nature of the structure or use. There's no proposed increase in the nonconforming nature of the structure or the use. There will be no sideline or rear nonconformities, as is the case with the existing structures due to the detached garage, which is located close to the west and the north lot lines. Again, while the structure remains non-conforming to Barcliff Avenue, it's no closer than the existing structure. Suitability of the site is adequate and suitable for the proposed demolition and rebuild. There'll be no negative impact on neighboring properties as a result of the construction or the environment as a result of the construction and the build. I would note that the property is currently served by a cesspool, and so Mr. Russell will be required to upgrade to a Title V septic system as part of the new build, which will be certainly an upgrade and a benefit to the environment and the water quality. 5, impact of scale, setting, and mass on neighborhood visual characters. I suggest there's no negative impact on neighborhood visual character. The height of the home will be increasing, but the design and size of the dwelling is still in keeping with the characteristics of the neighborhood. There is significant vegetative barrier at the rear of the property and along Mouse Hole Lane, which will remain as part of the proposal. Compatibility of the proposed use with neighboring uses. It's a single-family dwelling in a residential neighborhood and is therefore compatible. Methods of sewage disposal, source of water, and drainage. As I just mentioned, is currently served by a cesspool. It's going to be upgraded to a Title V septic system for a 4-bedroom home, which is certainly an improvement. The property is connected to town water, and it's a relatively flat lot with no drainage issues. Impact on traffic flow and safety. Generally, this is a criteria we sort of just go over quickly, but I did want to touch on this a bit. Dan and I met with neighbors who are here today, and I'm sure are going to speak after I'm done. And one of the primary concerns that they had was we're moving the driveway, which is right here currently, and there's the garage, over to this side of the property where the new garage is going to go as part of the proposed dwelling. And a concern for the folks in rear here who use Mouse Hole Lane was that the driveway and the proximity to Mouse Hole Lane It was going to create some congestion with pulling out onto Mouse Hole Lane, or from Mouse Hole Lane onto Barcliff Avenue, and also some concerns relative to sightlines. And so Dan and I spent a couple days with Dave Clark and discussing and thinking of some solutions. And we don't think it's really an issue in terms of the pulling out and congestion or any sort of danger with the driveway being located in that spot. It's over 25 feet from the lot line. If you drive around this area in general, there's a lot of driveways that are close together. There's 192 and 194 Barcliff just down the street. They're right on top of each other, 2 driveways. Mouse Hole Lane, while it is a lane and not a driveway, I think it serves a total of 4 properties, so it's not a very busy street in terms of volume of cars coming down. Now, the visibility and sightline, we recognize can be a concern. And if you've been out to the site, you've seen this vegetative barrier that's along the road here on Mouse Hole Lane. And Dan wants to keep most of that because it provides some privacy, and I think the neighbors want that barrier for the majority of Mouse Hole Lane. But up near the street, he would cut that back and install a low-growing 2.5-foot vegetative barrier such that there's still a little bit of a vegetative barrier, but the sightline from Mouse Hole Lane is greatly improved for the cars pulling out onto Barcliff. I drove down today again, and the existing hedge is quite high as you drive down out of Mouse Hole onto Barcliff, and I think just by paring that back, it's a big improvement for the sightlines to start with. Another concern was that here's the driveway, here's the garage again, that overflow cars would park in between the septic system that you see here, which we can't park over because it's not an H20 system, and Barcliff Avenue. So Dan has proposed he would do some landscape plantings in that area such that it's not it's not grass, it's not a lawn area into which overflow cars could park. Instead, he would put in some grass pavers over in this area to allow for the overflow parking, such that it's not going to impact the visibility and the sightlines for cars over Barcliff Avenue. So they'd park in the driveway, they'd park in the garage, there wouldn't be any parking here, and the overflow, there'd be a spot over here for an additional car. So we think that really solves any concern relative to the traffic flow and safety issues that I'm sure you're going to hear about in a bit from the neighbors. Noise and litter, we don't think there'll be any issues with noise and litter. It's a residential use in a residential neighborhood. Adequacy of utilities and other public services. It has adequate utilities, water, gas, and electric service. And 11 and 12 are not applicable. So, again, I think it's a bigger structure. There's no denying that. It's more floor area. It's a finished basement. But again, we meet the setbacks to the rear and to the sidelines. We're non-conforming to Barcliff, but we're already non-conforming to Barcliff. It's going up. It's going to be a little bit higher for a full second story. But we think it's compatible with the neighborhood. It's compatible on the lot. And we're not increasing the total building coverage, which I think from a zoning perspective is really a benefit to the property. So with that, Dan, Dave Sargent, and I are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here or on Microsoft Teams who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please indicate that you would like to join the conversation.
There's no one here to speak in favor.
I'll read the correspondence. First is from Christina Bassett. She writes on June 8th, the Chatham Historical Commission found that 184 Barcliff Avenue was historically significant and imposed a 180-day demolition delay set to expire on October 1st, 2023. Then we have a note from Judith Giorgio, our health agent. She writes on 6/6, I have reviewed the plan to demo and rebuild. They are not proposing an increase in septic flow. However, a new septic system is required. The health department will need permit applications and stamp plans prior to final building permit signing off. That's the extent of the correspondence. Is there anyone here today or on Microsoft Teams that would like to speak either against this plan or has a specific question? If so, indicate you'd like to join the conversation. There's a gentleman just raised his hand. Yes. If you would go to the microphone, that's right. Thank you. And just tell us who you are and where you're from, and then the floor is yours.
We're married.
Yeah. 42 years yesterday.
Yep.
Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Robert Quigley, my wife Charlene. We are property owners at 15 Mouse Hole Lane. And we have a few comments, if you will.
Sure.
And dating back to 1923, when the right-of-way was established, better known today as Mouse Hole Lane, it was conveyed by the previous owners of 184 Barcliff. And it was conveyed on the right side of the property line with the detached garage and driveway on the left side. This provided assurances that there would be safe and adequate sight distance for people entering and exiting Mouse Hole Lane and those using the driveway at 184. So the understanding is installing the septic system on the right side of the proposed house is obviously more economical because it was previously designed by the seller. Because of Title V regulations, the developer can build a garage closer to the septic system, and with that in mind, can utilize the entire basement footprint as usable space or finished space, maximizing the overall footprint. This design puts the garage, hence the driveway, on the right side of the property, the complete opposite side where it's been for the past 100 years or more. The concerns we have is allowing the driveway to be moved to the east or right side of the property, already on a non-conforming lot, will cause a hardship to the residents on Mouse Hole Lane. It allows for a larger dwelling in a historic area, again creating a hardship for those who purchased in this less congested area. It's already stressful exiting Mouse Hole Lane, as there is now a new driveway across the street, which wasn't shown on the site plan, and now potentially adding this one directly across the street from that one, plus the closeness of Mouse Hole Lane and the traffic that's existing on Barcliff. In light of the fact that there are no sidewalks on Barcliff, this only increases a concern for safety of pedestrians with strollers, cyclists, and dog walkers. The lot is already non-conforming, and this would create a tremendous hardship for those residents on Mouse Hole with that potential hazard with the driveway that can really only support one car, potentially having two cars in depth extending into the Barcliff right-of-way. The existing home has a net square foot area, according to the assessor's cards, of 1,724 or 21 square feet. The house being proposed has a net square foot area of 3,472 square feet. It's more than twice the size, in part because the existing detached garage is now being brought into the footprint, allowing for a second floor above the garage. I know we really can't control the future, but we can, through meaningful and thoughtful planning, eliminate potential hazards. I feel we have a duty as residents to bring forth our concerns to the board in the hopes of maintaining the aesthetic nature and not overbuilding or overcrowding our neighborhood, especially due to the fact that it is a non-conforming lot. I don't think keeping the driveway on the left side is a big ask, and respectfully request your consideration to deny the plan as submitted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, to listening to our concerns.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Charlene Quigley. As Bob mentioned, we're married, husband and wife, and I just can't tell you how much we really love Chatham. We purchased our home in 2018, and it's a really beautiful town. And the one question I have, and I'm not sure if zoning is the right place to just sort of convey my feeling. It's my understanding that, you know, I'm speaking as a mother and as grandmother right now, and this might be totally irrelevant to, you know, what you can or cannot do, and certainly I respect that. But it's come to my understanding that pools in Chatham have sort of two options, pool owners. You can either have a fence or you can have a cover that is an automated cover that you can press a button and then it closes the, you know, the cover for the pool. And I've had this conversation, and he's very nice, Mr. Russell, and I've had this conversation. What concerns me is this house will now have a pool very close to the north side of our home. I have 4 grandchildren, and what keeps me up at night is if this becomes a rental property, which we've been exposed to, just not too far from us. And there are people renting the house, and they're having pool parties, and it's bachelorettes and bachelor parties, and, you know, maybe they're, thank you, people who maybe don't know that the pool cover has to be closed, or maybe they may forget, or, and it's just something that will keep me up at night, knowing that this pool could, in theory, be left open through someone's negligence. And I worry that children in the neighborhood, or even children of renters, could get harmed. And I would hate for a tragedy to happen in order for somebody to revisit the laws for, you know, reviewing pool safety. So that's just a comment that I have, because this is something that concerns me with this pool so close to our property line. I was also wondering, and I was very happy to know that the hedge is staying along Mouse Hole Lane. I think it's important. That hedge has been there since the 1930s or 20s. Yeah. And is there a way for conditions of approval to maintain that hedge for in perpetuity or in the future for other people? Because the concern is if somebody decides to take that hedge down, you know, it could, cars, can encroach on Mouse Hole, which is a private lane. So I didn't know if that was something that could be done by the zoning board to keep that, that hedge. The driveway, and I do appreciate Mr. Russell doing some sort of plantings on the right side, because I don't know if you can put the plan back up on the screen. Yeah, if I could just.
Well, you can't go over there and talk. You can use a pointer from, you have to go back to the mic, okay?
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
All right, there you go.
So this is out of my wheelhouse, and I do apologize. But I do, we did have discussions with Mr. Russell, and my concern was if this does turn out to be, you know, a rental property with the amount of bedrooms and offices and that sort of thing, that cars or people might be inclined to park on the right side, not knowing that this is a, it's just going to be a grassy area, not knowing that this is a septic. Yeah. And then in doing so, you know, back up this way, because there's no curb. And so Mr. Russell and Mr. Norcross mentioned that, you know, there would be some sort of a landscape, and I proposed a boulder or something, or even a hardscape like a mini stone wall or something, so that if people did rent this house or try to cram more people into it, that they wouldn't try to park here and then egress this way. Because if you have somebody coming this way with the hedge, and you have somebody coming down Mouse Hole Lane simultaneously, and these people go to back up, or they want to head towards it or whatever, this could be a real hazard. And there's also another driveway right about here. So this is a real concern. So depending on whether or not this could be flipped, you know, keep the same plan, just flip it. You know, that was just something that was a concern of mine. So anyway, and also I'm just concerned. I think, you know, I'm sure that a lot of these newer air conditioning systems and generators, there was no air conditioning in this house prior, so there will be air conditioning pool systems, and there will be a generator, which I think you have to test on a weekly basis. My question is, what is the decibel level involved? It's going to be very close to the north side of my house, and I'm just curious if you have sort of guidelines on that, just so that, you know, I know a lot of the modern equipment tends to be quieter, but I just was curious as to if somebody could address that, if anybody knows about.
No. I mean, folks, when they come in here, you know, they talk about, you know, they want to install it and all that, but, you know, they usually deal with reputable individuals who keep it quiet. I mean, mine's noisy, I'll tell you that, but it only bothers me, so there you go. Okay.
Okay.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there anyone else? The lady who just got up?
Hi, my name is Diane Kendrick Rawlings. I live in Chatham my whole life, and I am one of three real year-round people who live at the end of Mouse Hole Lane. So I know they're not going to be doing construction until the beginning of October, and that's when most of the summer people go away, but I will still be here. Just some of the concerns, and everything that Bob and Charlene said, I totally agree with. We've talked a lot, we've met a lot, just to come up with, instead of we all repeating ourselves, so Bob was our spokesperson. Like they said, this house is going to be very, very large. I know it says a 4-bedroom, but there's 2 dens, and both dens have doors on them, so it's really going to be a 6-bedroom. And I'm very concerned about rentals. I know we can't stop them, but it's the 2 that are down at the end of Barcliff. There's already problems with parking, and there's trash cans, and it is sort of a crazy down there. It is getting a little difficult, but my aunt owned the property where I am now. She was there in the 40s, and it is difficult to see everything change. So that's basically what I wanted to say. But I know everything does change, but those are my concerns, that this is going to be a very extremely large house on a very, very tiny lot. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Norcross, would you like, well, before that, let me just make sure there's nobody on Microsoft Teams. Is there anybody there, Sarah, that wishes to speak?
I seen it. Oh, Ms. Briggs, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you. Ellen Briggs, Protect Our Past. Good afternoon, Chairman and board members of the ZBA.
Can you speak up just a bit? Ms. Briggs?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear? Hold on.
We can hear you, but
I can do.
it needs to be.
How's that better?
Okay.
All right. As you know, Protect Our Past is concerned with maintaining the charming identity of the Cape, and in this case, Chatham. This house is located in a historic community. Many people have referred to that. And in this design, I have to say it is hard-pressed to see traditional architectural elements that help identify this charming community. We have had preservation architects take a look at it as well, and they concur. I really appreciate the fact that they withdrew the first design and came back with the second one. However, I'm sad to say I think it still looks like Anywhere USA and not a typical Cape Cod charming community home. And that, I think the people who've spoken before me who live in that community are really feeling that. So we need to focus on streetscape, and I think this really is a bad example of what it could be. It's better, but it could be better. So I'm going to propose that you suggest they go back to the drawing board, maybe bring it down a bit, address all the concerns that I've been listening to, and try to respect the community as a whole, rather than just be a house in Westchester County in the middle of Barcliff Avenue. To me, that just doesn't fly. So I just wanted to share that, and I thank you for working hard to manage change. We can't stop it, but we sure can try and manage it. Chatham deserves that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Oh, is there anyone else on Microsoft Teams that would like to speak?
There's no one else to speak.
Okay. Jamie, rebuttal?
Sure, if I just a couple moments. In terms of massing the floor area numbers, it's the 3,400 is correct, including the finished basement. So above ground is 2,500, 900 square feet of that's in the basement, and obviously isn't part of what's visible from the street. The AC and the generator are all planned to meet the setbacks as shown on the site plan, and Dan is intending to use, some sort of baffling on the generator for both of those. The rentals, He's building it, he's gonna sell it, he doesn't know what people are gonna do. The rental, I think, is really a different question that the town needs to address as a whole, but it doesn't affect this application specifically, as there's nothing we can do about the rentals going forward for the properties until the town decides they wanna change some of their rental bylaws. The bedrooms, it's a 4-bedroom home. There are 2 offices that are shown that do not, according to Judy Giorgio, constitute bedrooms under the Title V standards. I was speaking with Dan about this week, and he has a lot of experience building. And since COVID, he said, in the post-COVID world, people want office space. It wasn't so much of an issue pre-2020, but now so many people are working remotely. Even if it's not full-time, they're working long weekends. They're coming down here on a Wednesday instead of waiting till Friday night so they can beat the traffic, and they're working Thursday, Friday from home. So in his experience with building post-COVID, the office space is a real ask for a lot of people, and it's space that they use as a legitimate office in a virtual world that we're now experiencing more. The height, it is higher. It's about 6 feet higher. I mean, part of that, the original design that we submitted with the gambrel was lower, but in order to accommodate the pitch of the cape, the height goes up. So that's why it's a little bit higher. I mean, again, the full second story was important to Dan so we could accommodate more of the living area. As it stands right now, the upstairs is extremely tight, extremely low ceilings, and while there are bedrooms there, they're not what you would consider for a modern home for bedroom use. And then lastly, the driveway. I mean, I really think, I understand the concerns. I think they're legitimate concerns, but I would suggest that cutting back that hedge alone is a huge improvement. Driving out there now, I have an SUV, so I sit fairly high, and it's tough to see past that hedge. So we're going to trim that hedge back. I think the location of the driveway is really not that much of a concern. Again, it's 25 feet from Mouse Hole Lane. It's not right next to it. And we're willing to, again, put plantings in that area so there won't be any overflow parking. I think that's more of a concern of those additional cars that would be in that location as opposed to the use of the actual driveway itself and the garage. So that would be my rebuttal, Mr. Chairman, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? We'll start with Randy.
So, good afternoon, Mr. Norcross. Now, just for the benefit of the listeners, because there may be from that neighborhood, the height of the house now that's there, could you tell us what that is?
Yes.
I know you said 6 feet, so how about, you could also, we could do the math, what's proposed?
No, yeah, I'm just looking for, sorry, we're just looking for the site plan. If I'm just going to run back to my seat, and I'll grab that.
Okay.
And I'm reading the site plan here, and the ridge elevation for the existing house is 86.2.
But I like it in
And
layman's
the
terms.
proposed is 92.3.
No,
so,
no, the height of the house.
Oh,
like
the height.
Regular person.
I'm sorry.
Knowing,
So it's 29.7.
that's what you're proposing.
Yes.
And what is it now?
Oh, you're gonna make me do math now? That's dangerous. Oh, boy.
Is it 23 now, or something like that?
Well, 6 feet less than that, so 23 roughly. Let me see, calculator. 24 feet, just about.
And you don't have to go up 6 feet, you just want to, right?
Well, I mean, if you want to have a full second floor, I think you need the additional area, headroom. I mean, currently the ceilings in the upstairs are very low if you go inside.
There's other houses, for example, 209, and that's, I think, maybe 26 or 27 feet high, and they have a second floor, I believe a full second floor, and they're not 29 feet.
I don't know what their ceiling heights are, but
It's right across the street to the right, just, so, I mean, it's doable, it doesn't have to be 29.
no, I'm sure you're right. It probably doesn't have to be. That was the design they were looking at for the taller ceilings on the second floor.
And you could also push it back if you wanted to, so it's not so close to the road, right?
You could. You would lose some of the, I guess the pool would be an issue in the back, which,
We can get to that later.
yeah, I'm sure that's not a concern for zoning, but there is some space in the back. I don't know how the neighbors would feel about the house being closer to their lot line would be a consideration. Because the further we go back, the folks who spoke today is
But if you
going,
just went straight back a little bit, it would be further from the road. And it
Further
wouldn't
from
be- It wouldn't intensify that existing nonconformity
It'd be
as much as it would at 29 feet.
I understand what you're saying. I guess
Okay.
it would go further to their property line, so I'm not sure what they'd
Right,
react.
yeah, but it could still be within the boundaries if it just went back, a couple of feet.
It would still be within the lot line. Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yep, the setbacks.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. And as far as the pool goes, how big did you say the pool would be?
It's really a splash pool. Dan, do you have? Yep, if you don't mind coming up and
very small.
10 by 16.
And is there any way of putting a gate around that, you know, besides just the cover?
If I could just speak for a second, I spoke to the.
Do you want to
pool-
introduce yourself?
Sorry, Dan Russell, I'm the owner of the property.
Thank you.
Jay might know this also. I think that they make it automatically closes on because there's a remote
Yeah, but-
that closes it.
Yeah,
So I
that's
think
true,
you
but
could
people can
program. I
forget
think you
to
could
do that.
program it where if there's no activity for a certain amount of time, the pool cover automatically closes. I could not find that out 100%. but
I'm
when-
asking about a gate. I'm not asking about machines that
Oh, I think a
break.
fence would look ridiculous around this little pool. I mean, I think site-wise, it will not look nice.
Well, a dead child in a pool doesn't look nice either.
No,
so.
that's why I'm saying, I mean, the pool cover is not, the Chatham allows you to do.
That's
Yeah,
the
but
building
just
code.
because something is allowed doesn't mean it's safe. So I don't have anything
okay.
further.
Okay.
Jenny?
I appreciate the redesign since April, and meeting the setbacks, maintaining the coverage. However, I feel like, coming in here today, I had two issues. One is height and the other is historic. I feel like you've done a great job with the setbacks, but at the expense of the height, right? You're going up to get everything that you want. But it is, according to my calculations, 29.7, Jamie, you're right, 23.6 was the current house, 6.1 taller than the house. I mean, that is really tall for that neighborhood. So that gets me to historic. Well, first of all, did you have any comments about the height? Any?
The height, we just tried to stay below the bylaw,
Right.
which is 30 feet.
Yeah, so you're 29.7, you're within inches of the 30.
And again, we had a gambrel, which everybody does in Chatham, obviously, because it's a easier house to build and keep the heights lower. I agree the Cape's a better looking house, but we did try to keep it lower in the last design, but they did not like that.
No, I watched that hearing.
Yeah.
I do appreciate what you're saying. However, and I do appreciate you redesigning it, but I also watched the recent historic tape. And you mentioned that it's a Cape design. I don't see Cape in this design. Could you maybe comment on some of that? I mean, I see elements of it. I see like the wall door.
Dave, why don't you speak to that, if you could?
That'd be Dave Sargent's the architect.
Okay.
I think if you were to look at this house, yeah. can hear
Dave, do
me
you mind
fine?
speaking up a little bit? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Is this any better?
A little bit.
Trying to get closer to my mic. How's this?
Can everybody hear him?
I'm talking as
Okay,
loud as I feel comfortable.
okay. Just go with it then.
All right. I think if you look at this, sort of the proportions or the arrangement of this house, mainly with the dormers, it's actually very similar to the existing house, right? The cape, the existing cape that's there, also has a large dormer both on the front and the back, similar to this one. I think what's a little different is that, you know, the existing house has a large, or had a large porch in the front that had gotten filled in. You know, one of the things that we were trying to do is to maximize the second floor without going over the building coverage. You know, pulling the garage over was one way. The other way is by utilizing as much of the first floor, building over the first floor as possible. So.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Yeah, so I think I'm struggling with I think a Cape does not have that steep vertical orientation that rendering does. I mean, the steep and extended shed dormer on the top a shed dormer is Cape, but that isn't, and I think it's because of the height. Essentially, the height, I think,
Sure.
is the issue.
Could I just ask what height are you looking for? I feel like I built a lot of houses in Chatham, and this is my 10th in like the last 8 years, and it seems like it's
Yeah.
becoming like 20 questions. I guess just if you could tell me what you think would be a good
Well, I
height.
mean, when you drive in the neighborhood, you don't see any houses, maybe one.
Yeah,
That's,
there's one, right.
that's right next door, but that's an older
There's
house.
certainly larger houses.
There are the vast majority of houses in Barcliff. And I want to go back to the historic comment. They, because it's a historic neighborhood, it's really important that the houses, that it looks historic. And the vast majority of houses in that neighborhood, I don't believe are that tall. And when you look at the current house and you see, you add visually, it's kind of hard to do, but 6 feet on top of that, I don't believe that it's in keeping with the other houses in the neighborhood, from a historic neighborhood perspective.
Okay.
I guess one of the things we struggle with is the existing design isn't necessarily historic either, the way it's been modified. The structure that's there. A portion of it is, but the front's been changed, the back,
Yeah, no,
the
I
side.
agree, and I remember, but historic did render it historically significant. And it is a historic neighborhood, that's all. And then I did have a question for you about addressing the neighbors, but it sounds like you have been in touch with the neighbors, but did you have anything else to add about the additional comments they made today?
I'd be perfectly willing, they were talking about a small stone wall or something. I mean, I don't want anybody, if it did turn into a rental, I wouldn't want anybody parking on that right-hand side, so I'll do whatever they would like. And again, if they would like me to add parking where it used to be, I normally use those grass pavers, where the grass grows right up through the pavers, so it still looks like a lawn. If they want to do, if you want me to add additional parking on the left side of the house where it used to be, I could do that too, so. To give them overflow parking, because their concerns were that cars parking out on Barcliff. Because when you go down Barcliff in the middle of the summer, I mean, there's cars all over the place, because it's such a, it's a pretty busy street.
And just to piggyback a bit, Dan did look at flipping it, as they mentioned, and it's not as easy as just flipping it around the design in terms of the lot line pitches in a bit. It is feasible, but it would impact what he's looking for in terms of the home, so.
Thank you, I don't have any further questions.
Dave Each.
Well, it sounds like there's room to perhaps work with the neighbors. I'm not sure. I mean, what you just said, Jamie, you looked at flipping it, but that didn't work as well. I understand, I mean, you can put a garage within 10 feet of the septic system, whereas the house has to be, what is it, 20 feet or something like 20?
Right.
That's
So, and I think, you're not increasing the lot coverage for what's there. But you do have a garage sitting there that's 4.1 feet from the other property line. And so you have a nonconformity already with the garage on that side. So I'm not sure, I mean, if you were coming to us, I mean, you're coming to us, and I think it's good that you've presented that you're maintaining the setbacks on the side and rear, but not, and you're no closer to the street. But we have the latitude to say, well, no, on that other side, since you're at 4 feet now, you might be able to put the building closer on that side than where you proposed it.
Right.
So I'm not sure, I mean, I'd like to see, I'm maybe not struggling as much as some of my fellow members that I can tell so far. I don't know. I mean, I think that, what you're proposing meets the height restriction. I think that, I do understand some of what Ginny's talking about. It's sort of the apparent massing on the front wall, if you step that dormer wall back, or ran, something, I don't know. But you are sort of, it seems to me that you're maxing this out. And it sounds like maybe you can have some agreement with the neighbors about treatment of the hedge and that area there. And if you can work all that out and the neighbors are happy with that, I could probably go along with that part. But it does seem like you're asking, you are intensifying what's there now. So that's not a question, I'm sorry. But I don't think I have any other questions at this point, Dave.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, if I could just clarify one piece.
Sure.
From Mr. Veach. So You're correct, if we were to maintain a detached garage, we could use that setback nonconformity. But the main house can't be any closer because it's a different structure.
Okay.
So
all
we
right.
have to abide by the
Right.
25-foot for the main house.
Okay.
Ah,
Either one can answer this, pretty simple, I guess. On page A8 of the drawings from David Design, you're showing the west elevation.
okay.
Got it?
Yes.
Yes.
We have it.
So the first floor elevation is 0, a baseline, and the second floor is elevation 10.4. So that raises the question, how high is the ceiling of the first floor?
About 9'2".
That's what I was afraid of. Isn't a normal house 7.5 feet?
No, oh, no. Absolutely not. What would you say is average, Jay? Would you,
I really can't say what's average. but-
they're all very high. All the new houses in Chatham have very high ceilings.
Oh, well, let me ask the question then this way. In historic areas, which we've, I think, established, what would be in your experience, what would be the height of the first floor?
Well, I guess the more relevant question, what's the building code height? Is that?
Well, you
That-
can't be below 7 feet, I think.
Is that, because that's, I mean, I understand your point, but if it's historic or not, you still have to meet a certain threshold and then work off of that.
7 is livable
Yeah,
space.
building code's a minimum standard, and it's 7.2, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, historical, I've done a lot in Hingham. Most of them are low 8s,
Thank you.
in historical.
I do appreciate the new design. Is definitely, it makes it a lot easier to take a look at and consider. I have comments for deliberations. I guess driving from your home up to this site, I suspect you've been up Stage Harbor Road a little bit.
I see you like every day.
And there's
yeah.
there's a house under construction across from the Atwood Museum.
Yep,
It's about 20 feet from the road,
yeah,
and it's about 30 feet high.
yeah, it's the same, yeah.
Do you find that here's the question. Do you feel that appropriate and compatible with the neighborhood of the antique homes on that street?
I'm not wild about the design of the house. I think my design is going to be much nicer.
We don't get to look at design.
Right.
We've been coached to ignore that. My concern was a building 30 feet high, 20 feet from the road. Do you think it's appropriate and compatible with the neighboring homes?
Not in that exact location, no.
No more questions.
Lee?
No, everyone has pretty much covered my questions, so I don't have any questions right now.
Paul?
I just asked Jay, is there a regulation in town with respect to line of sight and distances between driveways or roads?
I don't believe so.
So it's simply a matter of safety, and it's not something that comes within the purview of the building department?
We don't have a setback for a driveway to a property line.
Okay, thank you. What would be the plan for parking here if you're not parking to the right of
you
the
could put
proposed
this-
driveway?
If you put the site plan back up, we could show you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so you see where the old driveway is?
Yes.
That's where I'm proposing, where the neighbors were worried about overflow parking. That's where I'm proposing doing pervious pavers where the grass, again, grows right up through the pavers. So when you look at it from the street, it'll look like a lawn, but it gives a hard surface for overflow parking to park.
And how many spaces are you talking about having there?
2 or 3 parked in. We could do either, you could easily do 3. We have, 2 parking in each other with compact cars in the driveway, plus a car in the garage, so that'd be a total of 5 or 6.
So you can have 2 in the driveway, 1 in the garage,
Yeah.
and 3 on the left-hand side?
Yes. I mean, I think that's a little overkill for a house this size, but
For 4 bed, I mean,
if you wanted it, I have no issues at all doing it.
the requirement's 2 per, for a residential structure, 2 parking spaces, but obviously with 4 bedrooms, I agree you need a little bit more room for some overflow.
Right. And you are talking about going to the 3492 in terms of square feet versus the 1721 now?
Including the finished basement, that's correct, for living area.
Right, on the first and second floor, it goes from about 17 something to 25.
2,500, yeah.
Right.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Okay, Paul?
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
Paul approves.
Randy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
And I have, okay. So deliberations, we'll start with Ginny.
Okay, I'm looking at your criteria, Jamie. I have a problem with 1, 2, 5, and 8. Well, the 8 was based on what the neighbors brought today. I basically said it, and I think Mr. Veach said it better. It's just, I appreciate the work you're doing. I know you're working with Historic, you second time in front of us, not presenting, but coming here with a design, redoing it. But I just feel like the size of the site is too small for all that you want to do in a historic neighborhood. So that's just my thoughts with adequacy of the site in terms of what you're proposing. That's number 1. And then the biggest one, really, in my view, is the compatibility of the size of the structure in the neighboring properties, this specifically being a historic neighborhood. And then 5, because of the height and all the things you're trying to do, I appreciate it, I understand it, you're going up, and I think it's too tall. And then number 8, I think we have some issues, and maybe that can be worked out, and I appreciate that you're trying to accommodate that you did that even before you came today. So that's what if I were voting, that would be my concerns.
Dave Veach.
Wow, there's a lot to this. So I definitely will say that this design, in my judgment, represents an improvement over the gambrel that you originally proposed. And I thank the Historical Society for helping to move you in that direction. The Historical Commission, excuse me, moving you in that direction. I think that was a positive direction. I'm hearing with the questions and things and with Jenny's comments, some concerns about the compatibility with the surrounding, with the neighboring properties. I think I'm a little bit old school, so I'm not sure whether I'm old school speaking here or not. I think that there's room to have an adequate ceiling height that is not 9 feet 2 inches on the first floor.
Okay.
I think you can lose a foot there, no problem, honestly, in my judgment. But I don't know what people currently expect, but we have seen proposals come to us that some of our considerations were with respect to height of house, and we started looking at the designs and seeing ceiling heights that really, it's hard to support given now, not in this instance, but in others. I can remember one where we were being asked to grant a variance because somebody wanted to have ceiling heights that were higher than 8 feet. So I have an overall sense that this is just, I think it's just asking a bit too much of the site. The pool is not a big one, and probably that's a It seems to be becoming a feature that a lot of people want to have, but it also does limit your ability to set the house a little back further from the street. I think the combination, maybe of being in where it is with respect to street. I mean, I think, if you set it back a little further, that diminishes the apparent height somewhat, potentially. I don't know, I'm looking at the site plan here, and I'd have to look a little more closely, but, it looks like the distance off the street is probably about average for many of the other structures along there, and in that respect, you are honoring the streetscape, if you will, by not, that avenue, that alley, the distance off of the street. I'd like to see you do a little more work with it, honestly. So, Bob.
I guess it's no secret that it's a good-looking house on paper. In some other part of Chatham, I'd have no problem with it at all. But I live on a street very close to the Atwood Museum.
Yep.
And I think that house is a mistake. And you have almost the same dimensions, 20 feet from the street. I do agree that if you pushed it back to 40 feet, then the 30 feet would be less in your face.
Yeah, you can't do
But that doesn't appear to happen, but the bottom line is, I'm not supporting it.
Okay.
Lee?
I agree with Buck. I think it's a great-looking house. And I know you've done a lot of houses in Chatham and elsewhere. But this neighborhood needs something a little less, a little more traditional, a little more capey. It's my neighborhood, actually.
Right.
And a lot of the houses in the neighborhood have been redone and are in the process of being redone, and they're very traditional. They're very capey. And I struggle with the criteria 1 and 4. It's a big house on a little lot, and the neighboring properties, I think that it'll have an impact on them. I actually commend you for the pool and keeping it a small pool. It fits really nicely in that backyard.
Sure.
But those are my thoughts.
Paul?
Well, I think I agree with Lee. I think it probably is not the appropriate house in this particular neighborhood, given the intensification of the use of the house. Going to, as I mentioned, the 3492 square feet from 1721 is a huge change, and maximizing the height of the ceilings and so forth creates a bigger house. I think it's just too big for the neighborhood, and it will not fit into the landscape of the rest of the neighborhood. So I think for those reasons, I would be inclined not to approve.
Randy?
I don't have to say too much because most things have been said. And I'll just take a different take at it. In terms of the reasons for the bylaw, that's where you fall into a lot of problems. For example, the safety is number one, of course. And we have the safety issue with the driveway. And it was in its wisdom, people who decided a long time ago that the driveway really belongs on the other side, and they did that. So I don't think to come in and change something that was well thought out 100 years ago, whatever, that's a bad idea. The safety, as far as the pool goes, I won't say any more about that, but I do think the house should get pushed back a little bit and made a little bit, maybe 2 to 3 feet lower. And you could do that by your own admission. A house that's in a historical area has 8-foot ceilings, so you said it yourself.
Right, an existing historical house, right.
Yeah,
Right,
but,
yep.
yeah, and this is a historical area. And so the preservation of that is part of the bylaw. Reasons for the bylaw: encourage qualities which distinguish Chatham as a desirable community for year-round and seasonal residency. Preservation of land and buildings, preservation of historical assets of the community, protection of overcrowding of land, so we have that aspect here. So I can stop there and say that I wouldn't support it the way it is now, but if you come back and take in all our, comments, you probably could get something in there. Thanks.
Well, I'm not going to add much to what everybody else has said, but I'm disappointed that the driveway was moved. And saying that, I like the old garage, even though it's not used as a garage. I mean, I really do, but it throws it off when I look at the plan, seeing that the garage is now an integral part of the house, and I understand why you want to do it for the space above, but you've got plenty of other, I think you could lose that and not have any parking over there. Keep the driveway where it is. Make that garage a little better, or whatever you want to do. And all the other things everybody's added in. That's the only thing I wanted to add. So, Jamie, you got a choice here. Would you like us to vote, or would you like to withdraw?
No, I would not like you to vote. We would ask to withdraw without prejudice, please.
Okay. Paul?
I'll move to grant the requested withdrawal without prejudice.
And David seconds.
Okay, we need a vote on that. Buck?
Buck approves.
Paul?
All approves?
Andy approves.
Dave Veach approves.
I approve too. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, I don't think there's anything else for us today. So, Paul?
I will move to adjourn.
And Dave Veach seconds.
Buck approves.
Everybody can vote on this. Lee?
I approve.
All approves?
It's reckless.
I approve. Randy?
Approve. Approve.
Jenny?
I approve.
And Dave Veach approves.
And the official time, Sarah, is?
6:02 PM.
All right, thank you, one and all. Nick Rout.
But if you read this and just think about it, and what it is they're concerned about size of homes on small lots. And you can file it if you want, I don't.